is we have a draft decision that has been put out. It's been on the zoning board website, so people can have had an opportunity to take a look at it, and hopefully that's where we're at for tonight. We also have with us Ashley Clark, the community and economic development representative for the town, and we also have Amy Questle with us this evening, town council, and the regular board members, and Amy Messier, the zoning board administrative secretary. Okay, so at this point, Ashley, I'm sorry, not Ashley, Amy Questle, we talked earlier, and just wanted to touch base with you to see if you have any guidance before we open this up to the public and get some comments. I believe we're very close to finishing up as far as public testimony, and I just wanted to find out from you if you had any recommendations for us as we move forward this evening.
So I don't, Mr. Chairman. You had said that you were going to take limited public comment, which I think is a good idea. I did have one thing, which is that I found out today that the letterhead on the decision that I used is old, and I apologize to that. Mr. Delaney is a full member, so I apologize for that, and Mr. American is no longer a member, so that will be changed. But I do apologize for that.
That's an easy fix. So
that is.
Okay, so at this point, we did say that being a public hearing, we would open it up to comments from the public. So what I'd like to do is just ask people that if they have any particularly new information that they provided to the board, it's always best if it's provided in writing, and that would be helpful. So at this point, Amy Messier, is there anybody that wants to speak at this time?
Yep, so Becky Litback has her hand raised. So here you are, Becky, whenever you're ready. Hold on. Here we go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, thank you. Just real quick, I had sent an email to the board last week asking if we were going to be able to have Chief Bailey and Deputy Chief Barry on the phone tonight so that our lawyer, Dennis Murphy, could ask a few questions. I know that didn't end up happening, so what I do want to know is, would it be possible if the hearing is not closed this evening and if we, the residents, decide to move forward, do we have the board's permission to ask Deputy Chief Barry and Chief Bailey if they would sit down and do, I'm assuming virtual, but do a meet with our hired fire protection engineer to go over continued fire safety code? So I know that it may seem that we've exhausted this, but I just feel like as an outside, not connected source, we do still have some safety concerns that may be valid for our lawyer. And I just wanted to know if this is something that you would permit, again, if the hearing is not closed today.
So I don't think, I guess the question is, what is going to be provided by a conversation with an outside fire protection consultant and the chief of the fire department or the deputy? Is there something that is against the fire code that is being brought up, or is there, what is the new information that would be introduced to the zoning board?
So unfortunately, that's way above my head. And I'm doing the best that I can to be the advocate and the in-between here, but we didn't, have our lawyer come on tonight because, we didn't have the confirmation from the board in time, or we still haven't had a confirmation really, if that was going to happen tonight. So, I mean, from our conversations, it still just seems like there is, great safety concern with the extremely long dead end / I know you can loop around, but that one long road to get to the 6-story buildings. And then again, even at the 5-story height, if that's what you're going forward with, there's still concern with the safety. And again, I don't know the fire codes. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I do. I know nothing about it. But our lawyer does seem to think that there are still fire safety codes that are concerned, and that's why we wanted to bring in this fire protection engineer. Now, I don't have a definite answer, and of course, you know, this is your decision, but I don't know. I just, you know, out of all the 40Bs that have gone on over the last 20 years, you know, there's been massive ones, but the height has been 4 stories, and now we're looking at 6 stories and possibly compromising at 5. And I just feel that, or we feel that, sorry, I'm outside, that there are still concerns, you know. So I don't know. I don't want to keep rambling. That's where we are.
Okay, so one of the things, Becky, as we, you know, have looked at this case, and we're all like you. I can just say the zoning board is struggling with this ourselves. And one of the things is, if there's something that's not right in the plans that doesn't meet the fire code safety, well, that's going to have to be resolved, even if whatever happens with the zoning board. That's a separate issue. They have to follow the state fire codes no matter what. So
right.
I actually feel that we're looking at the other issues of safety that are more interpretive, whereas, you know, the fire code is pretty straightforward, and it either meets it or it doesn't meet it. And if it doesn't meet it, well, in the future, if something's built, they're going to have to meet it.
Right.
Okay.
I think it was more that we may be able to find something more interpretive in the midst of all of it, possibly. But again, I don't want to speak without having the facts. So I guess it was just, if the hearing doesn't close, would you be open to that in the future? We can't ask, for whatever reason now, you know, town council has advised Deputy Chief Barry and Chief Bailey to go do everything through the ZBA. So I guess I'm asking your permission on the residents' behalf to go forward with that meeting. You know, if we feel that there could still be something safety concern, and if, you know, if you feel you've exhausted it all, then, you know, we'll respectfully go with that.
Okay. You know, I don't make appointments for the chief of the departments, and
he just wants your permission to be able to do it, I think is.
The zoning board doesn't give people permission to talk with the chief or anything like that. What I think we're at the point where we've gone through a lot of the safety stuff, and if it's meeting the state safety expectations of the fire department, then the zoning board relies on that. I also made the point, and I hope everybody understood this, that if there is a safety problem that we're not aware of, and it's a violation of the fire code, well, then the applicant, if anything's built, will have to follow the code. Right. It's not something like if it's gotten by us right now, there's no chance to come back. The law's the law. They have to follow the state code.
Okay.
Amy Kressel, am I missing something on this, or how are we doing on that?
So no, Mr. Chairman, no, you are correct. So the request was, in what I understood it to be, was that the Attorney Murphy wanted to have his fire safety engineer meet with the fire department because there were some issues. So that can't be done outside of the Zoning Board of Appeals hearings, because the Zoning Board of Appeals is the comprehensive permit granting authority. So if there were fire safety concerns, they should have been brought up here at the Zoning Board of Appeals. But the second layer to all of this is exactly what you're saying, Mr. Chairman, is that the fire department operates off of CMRs, which are the Code of Mass Regulations, and those are state codes, and they follow down from state statutes. The Zoning Board of Appeals has no jurisdiction, has no authority to waive any state statute, any state CMR. So for example, with regard to the Wetland Protection Act, which is a state statute, the Zoning Board of Appeals has no has no role in that permitting. Only the Conservation Commission does. So with regard to fire safety, and so that would be the fire department. With regard to the building code, that would be the building department, plumbing code, building department, all of that. So I'm not really sure what whatever Attorney Murphy wanted to present, it would have to be presented to the zoning board, and that, I mean, that there's been numerous hearings on that. So that's where my opinion came from.
Okay, and I do appreciate everything. Thank you all. Again, I think it was just, we had wanted Dennis Murphy to be on tonight to ask those questions with you, but since we didn't receive the response, you know, we didn't want to have him come on and waste anybody's time. So my apologies, but that was, you know, that was our hope for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Becky. Amy, is there somebody else out there that wants to speak?
Okay, I keep forgetting I'm muted. Next is Bill Hamilton. So, Bill, whenever you're ready.
Yes, can you hear me okay? Yep. Okay, my question is, the Water Resource Protection Overlay District is a state bylaw, not a local bylaw, and I believe that has some impact on this.
I heard your question about the Water Resource Protection District, and you know, a good piece of Walpole's in that district. What about this project would be, you know, the concern that it's in the Water Protection District?
Well, the Water Protection District has the impervious rule of 15%, and I know there's a request to have that not held to 15%. And where it's a state bylaw and not a local bylaw, I don't know if the ZBA has the authority to grant relief from that 15%.
Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding that that's section 12 of the zoning bylaw, which is a local bylaw. The DEP zones 2 and 3, those are state zones, and those, any regulations under those, under zones 2 and 3 would be state statutes, which I don't, obviously they're not seeking any waivers from.
Well,
okay, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
This issue was discussed at some length at a prior hearing where the question was raised whether, you know, we could grant a waiver to our local bylaw since they do derive from, there's a specific prohibition on granting or waiving certain requirements in the state regulations. But it was upon further discussion and information submitted by the applicant, we were not waiving that requirement. We were only requiring that they demonstrate compliance with the special permit requirements under that section of the bylaw, but waiving the sort of procedural requirement to actually file a separate application. So substantively, we're still reviewing the substance of our bylaw, but we're not requiring the applicant to submit a separate special permit application with the information that would just be duplicative of what's in the record here.
Oh, okay, am I being told that the Water Resource Protection Overlay District is a local bylaw?
No, the discussion that we had to do with whether, as you pointed out, I believe in your testimony previously, that there's a state regulation that prohibits certain waivers being granted by zoning requirements that are designed to protect water resources. And since that's the argument was, since that's a state requirement, we can't issue a waiver. But we're not issuing a waiver under that section. We're just requiring that they comply with it, the special permit aspect of it. So they've submitted the information in support of that position that they're eligible for a special permit under that. and so we're not granting a waiver.
So the ZBA is not giving any special permit or waiver for the 15% impervious.
They've asked for that they comply with a special permit, that they are entitled to a special permit based on the information that they've submitted to the board.
Well,
So we're not waiving that requirement. We're evaluating the information and determining whether they have met those requirements. So in that sense, we're applying the special permit criteria under the bylaw. We're not waiving that.
Okay, I thought only the planning board could do that.
So with a 40B application, the zoning board steps into the shoes of the planning board.
For
So
local bylaws, but also, are you telling me also for a state bylaw? Because I was involved in the adopting of that bylaw back in the 80s, and we specifically went to the Secretary of Environmental Affairs, and we jumped through all the hoops to get that as a state bylaw. And I hope it's being treated as a state bylaw, because that's what it's paid. The town paid a lot of money to make that a state bylaw. And we hired not only IEP, but we also hired Gregor I. McGregor, an environmental attorney at law, to make sure we did everything right. Now, if we haven't done everything right, I'd like to know it right now.
The bylaw's in existence. I don't know what you mean by doing it right. And I'm looking at the waiver, and the one you're talking about is for impervious more than 15% to 2,500 square feet of any lot that requires a special permit. And they've asked for a waiver for that special permit requirement. That's what you're talking about, right, Mr. Hamilton?
Yes.
12(3)(c)(5). Okay. And that's one of the things. That's what they've asked. They've asked for the waiver for that. We've discussed waivers, and we'll decide whether that's a waiver that is granted. That's part of the process that we're deliberating. Is there, you seem to, I assume you're opposed to granting that waiver.
Well, yes, I am, because of the harm that it could cause to our water supply. But in addition to that, my understanding, and I haven't had the benefit of legal counsel, so I'm here pro se, but the zoning board, I believe, only can give waivers and special permits for local zoning. I don't believe you can do it for state bylaw.
That's correct. On a 40B, the zoning board gives waivers for local bylaws, not the state bylaws. So.
And the Water Resource Protection Overlay District was designed and operated under the guidance of the Secretary of Environmental Affairs. And after it was adopted at town meeting, we had to go through a year of appeals, the appeal process, because that was required by the Secretary of Environmental Affairs. So I really question whether or not the waiver can be issued by the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay. I've got it right here. You even said we're talking about section 12(3)(c)(5). It's a town of Walpole bylaw. It is not a state bylaw. It's not a state law. And that's what we're looking at, and whether we would grant a waiver for that. And that's what we're looking at. We're not looking at the state rules.
Okay, so now I got the answer to what I was asking. So you don't consider that a state bylaw, where I believe that we jumped through all the hoops and we made it a state bylaw. So I'll look into if this is in fact a state bylaw. I talked to DEP, and DEP said when they transferred in 2006 Walpole's records to Lakeville from the Boston Crossing, that our files were lost. I don't know if they've been recovered, but I'll start working on that, because it was implemented to be a state bylaw, not a local bylaw. And I believe you guys are treating it as a local bylaw, which is not, you know, there's confusion on part that you have that it's a local bylaw, and I believe it's a state bylaw, and something's happened to undo the state bylaw. In fact, we spent a lot of time and a lot of money adopting what we had to adopt, and everything was done with the consent and guidance of the Secretary of Environmental Affairs. And after it was adopted, we had to wait 1 year and allow anyone whose property was affected to appeal the boundaries and whatever for the Water Resource Protection Overlay District. And after a year, there were many meetings where people came in and looked at their property and wondered if they should appeal. But at the end of the year, there were no appeals, and we notified the Secretary of Environmental Affairs, which you don't do for a local bylaw. You only do that for a state bylaw. And after the year, then it was enforced, and everything was put in place.
Okay, so we're just dealing with the Walpole bylaws, and I even think the correct term, the state does not have bylaws, the state has regulations. Town Council, am I correct on that?
You are correct, Mr. Chairman. The town has bylaws, cities have ordinances, and the state has regulations.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Hamilton.
Well, I don't think that is correct, because I have been told by legal counsel that the state bylaws are kept by the clerk's office, but we'll see.
Okay, Amy, is there somebody else who'd like to speak tonight?
Yep, so next we have Erica Burden. Erica, whenever you're ready.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. I wanted to verify that the Walpole residents have submit a petition to deny the height waiver at 4 stories. This is one of the only legal ways that we felt we can have this project downsized. The statement that this project will be deemed uneconomic at 4 stories without having seen a pro forma, to us, is unreasonable and unbelievable. We had almost 350 signatures on our petition. The zoning board is here to represent the town of Walpole, and we are the town of Walpole. This board is the only voice that we have been given. I want to reiterate that South Walpole has already lost with this development coming to our neighborhood. We have nothing left to lose, and I don't think that's clear enough. We've already lost. Our neighborhood is destroyed already. This is our last chance to fight. And in our opinion, if Omni appeals, then so be it. He appeals. Nothing that he has offered us is going to mitigate the fact that this complex at such a large size is going to ruin our neighborhood. Hundreds of people in this town have joined together to fight the disaster that we feel is coming. I want to reiterate how much our community has come together. We have raised thousands of dollars on a private lawyer. People in the times of COVID, people have lost their jobs, and people are still willing to donate. We've raised so much money because people are that passionate about doing what we can to mitigate the size of this project. We've also spent countless hours on this, and it's a little bit frustrating when we hear that 5 stories is going to be acceptable. And I can't stress enough, it is not acceptable to us. We feel it's worth the fight, regardless of what that is, how much money that costs, and how much money the town might lose from David Hale. So thank you. That's all I had to say for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Erica. And as you know, we have not made a decision on the heights of the buildings at this time.
Thank you.
Okay, so next we have Mark Major. Mark, whenever you're ready.
Thanks. I think I've already submitted a couple letters, and without rehashing everything, I want to really double down on a lot of what Erica just said. I think we have an opportunity to minimize the damage here, and what I have been looking at in the draft decision does not do that. I think we need to do better. We need to go back to the well. We need ask for a reduction in total number of units, a reduction in stories and height, and those are not the same thing, right? We don't want him just moving stuff around. We need less total units. 300 is way too big. And we need him to commit to that, both now and at any point in the future. We need a second entrance that doesn't come from Summer Street and is not an emergency entrance. One entrance for that many units, even if downsized, is just not, it's not going to work. It's not only going to cause a ton of traffic on Summer Street, but for all the residents that will end up living there, it is going to be a parking lot during rush hour 2 times a day where they won't even be able to get out of the street. It's just not going to work. So you need to figure out a better way to find another place to put an entrance. It's not Summer Street. And I don't think any of these things are things we've actually asked for. You know, in reading the decision, I know we have certain things that we can approve or not approve, but we can ask for it. This is a negotiation. And David Hale does not want this process to drag out any longer. And we have that in our favor. If we can come to the table with an offer that is good enough for him and it's not going to take 2 more years going through an appeals process, he's going to consider it. And I think we need to do that. So, you know, again, I've just skimmed the draft decision. I didn't realize it was posted. It's not good enough. And I hope the board will really consider that before agreeing to do anything. We have an opportunity, and this is the time to do it, to put some real demands down and say, if you're going to put this project here, you need to do all this stuff so that it just minimizes the potential impact of this. And you know what? If he fights it and he wins, it's a risk that we feel was worth taking. Because honestly, I don't think he will. I think he's nervous. I think he's getting a lot of pressure from his financiers for why this is taking so long, and he hasn't gotten an answer yet. And the thought of this dragging out for 2 more years in an appeals process is terrifying to him. And I think he's willing to settle if we give him something that's somewhat reasonable. And I don't think we've done that yet. So that's my thought. I appreciate you doing this. I appreciate you listening to us and taking the time to really understand what we're saying and to try to prioritize the current residents instead of potential future residents. Thank you.
Okay, Mark. So what you're looking for is a reduction and a second entrance. That's what you're saying you think would be reasonable?
I do. I think those 2 things to me would minimize the damage that this is going to do for anybody that lives within a mile of this place.
Okay, thank you. Amy, who's next?
Okay, so we have Bill Hamilton again. So here we go. Bill, you're on.
Thank you. I did put a statement in writing about American Drive.
Mr. Hamilton, a statement about what?
A possible. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I got confused. It kept coming up unmoved. There was a road, American, which still exists. It's a paper street, and at one time it went all the way to the end of Industrial Road, and it was chopped off when they had the power plant. Do you remember the power plant that was that was attempted at the end of Industrial Road? They were going to build a power plant, and that terminated the paper street American Road. But that power plant was never built, and the American Road could again go to the end of Industrial Road, and that would bring everybody out to 1A. So you'd have 1A and you'd have Summer Street. You'd have 2 entrances and 2 exits, and the one would be, I would imagine that the residents would prefer the one at American that went to Industrial Road, which is a much cleaner run out of the project there. Whereas they come into all that traffic that builds up on Summer Street. But I would hope that would be considered, because that paper street, American Drive, went to the end of Industrial Road, but it was chopped off when they wanted to put a power plant at the end of Industrial Road, which never was put in. So American Drive could go to the end of Industrial Road because there's nothing there today. And that would be a terrific solution to the traffic problem on Summer Street.
Mr. Hamilton, I just pulled up on the maps, and I'm looking at the zoning maps, and I'm looking at the property maps. There's no road that goes to the end of Industrial Road that I'm seeing, and there's also wetlands out there, and there's also, I mean, you know, I don't know what you're talking about, and I'm looking at the map. I don't see any road by that name.
Well, American Drive, it's I can send a picture where it's on the map. It still exists at Summer Street as a paper street, and it does go, and it follows the railroad tracks all the way down to Industrial. It did. Now, as I said, it did prior to being chopped off by the power plant. So when they were going to build the power plant, that ended the American Drive paper street that went to Industrial Road. But at one time, it was a paper street that did go there. So I think it's possible that it could go there again because the power plant was never built. I'm just saying that's a much better exit and entrance for that development than the Summer Street, which is a terrible bottleneck.
You know, we that's not an issue before the zoning board at this point, and that's not part of this development. It's not part of anything that we can even consider because it doesn't exist.
I understand, but I thought I would just mention it in case there was some reason to consider a better entrance and exit, because that could be it.
Okay. Amy, who else would like to speak?
Okay, so next we have Joanne Mulligan.
Hi, Joanne, go ahead.
Hi, Chair Lee. Thank you. I'll be really quick. I do agree with what everyone else has said, especially Erica and Mark Major. I think what Mr. Hamilton's trying to express, and I've looked at the map too, and I don't see anything on the map, but I think the whole issue with Summer Street is Summer Street's a big problem as it is right now with the train tracks. So we're going to have this new development coming off Summer right at the train. That's just raises so many safety concerns. But by having the other street coming just a little bit up, towards Norfolk, off Summer, and I know we've discussed it at length about that bad corner it's at, really couldn't be in a worse location. So I totally do agree with that and understand where people are trying to find, and there's a lot of different talk about different ways to get another road, Chair Lee, but I looking at the map, I think it's really difficult, but I do think the Summer Street isn't a great answer. And I just want to reiterate again that the residents do want 4 stories, and that would take the number of units down about 60, I believe. And we're really being affected by this. As Erica mentioned, I just hope that we can be a little bit less affected, and that by reducing the size, we can feel like that we're getting a little bit of more, comfort isn't the right word, but safety wise with the number of people that are going to be in there. As I cited before, it doubles South Walpole. It's just too much. But thank you. I know this is a really hard decision for you guys, and I really appreciate you listening to us.
Okay, thank you. Amy, who's next?
So at the moment, I actually don't see any hands raised. I lied. Stephanie Hardman, actually. So whenever you're ready, Stephanie.
Hi, my name is Stephanie. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and the board members. I'm just speaking on behalf of, I've been a resident for Walpole about almost 6 years. I currently live at the preserves. So I am actually a family that would be considered, who will look into being one of the 40B who would be looking into the housing, not the apartments, but the houses that are going to be developed. So as a family looking into the situation, I really am concerned about the extra road, being developed. I think it's a real huge safety issue. And also I think that the stories are really going to be way too high. As looking into it as a family that would possibly be living in that, in that area, I feel like we really need to see if we can push back. Like I said, I am looking into the housing part because I want to own in this town. I've been here 6 years, and I want to remain here. I have 3 children. I'm raising in Walpole. I love this town. And I just feel like we really should, band together and try to see what we could do. I am concerned for the safety, just coming in and out, and them being 5 and 6 stories high. Currently I live in the preserve, so they're not that high. They don't need to be. I think this project is extremely, huge. It's too much. Being in the environment right now, living in it, I live it every day. It's too much. Also too, I don't know if this would fall into a play. I don't know if Amy could comment in on it, but I was also wondering if when they do the lottery, if Walpole current residents could be put in a separate lottery, if the board maybe could consider that, just so us current residents could maybe have more of a chance to, have first choice. I don't know if that's, legal wise. I don't know if that's
Stephanie, I can answer that question for you.
Okay.
That's all handled by the state and the fair housing laws.
Okay.
So, town council, am I correct on that?
Yeah.
You are correct, Mr. Chairman, and we will often put that as a condition that Walpole residents, can get some kind of, first chance, et cetera. And
Okay.
Unfortunately, every single time the monitoring agent and DHCD say that they're not going to abide by that condition because it's not in accordance with fair housing laws.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Okay. Amy Messier, who's next?
I don't see any hands raised at the moment.
Okay, so at this point, what's the thoughts of the board? Let's have a discussion. Do we think we need additional information? Is there a reason to close the hearing? Is there a reason to keep it open? What are the thoughts of the 5 board members?
Can I ask a quick question about the monitoring?
Sure.
Since we haven't had a project this large, and I don't know if Amy can help me on that, on the monitoring. Do we have any say in the monitoring?
No, not necessarily. There's a monitoring agent that will be established, and the monitoring agent and DHCD are the ones that determine where the affordable units, how they are designated and things like that. So the way that I always look at these is, so as soon as the decision is made is when DHCD is supposed to take over, and they are supposed to make sure that all of the affordable units are in to all of the other units. There, you can't tell the difference between affordable units and market rate units, and that's all on the other side of the decision, where that's when DHCD comes into it, because that's all under the guidelines, the DHCD 40B guidelines to affordable units.
How does Walpole monitor the monitor?
The monitor is it can be determined by by the town, but the monitor answers to DHCD and the select board with regard to the select board will be the ones signing the affordable restrictions.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so does that answer that question, which, you know, I was hoping to get a discussion about really what it comes down to, zoning board members. Do you want to close the hearing tonight, or is there a reason to keep it open to get more information, or what's the pleasure of the board?
I can go either way personally. I could close. I don't know if they're going to come up with anything fire. I don't see how that's going to happen because he's going to comply with Mass state laws. He's built many a project. So I feel we probably can close.
Okay, Jane Coffey, go ahead.
Help me. This is a senior moment for me. Have we or have we not taken a stand or a position on it with before 4 stories, 5 stories, or 6 stories? Where are we now?
So I think at the last meeting, at the last meeting, the board was very clear. We did not think 6 stories was acceptable. Nobody on the board thought 6 stories was acceptable. Some of us, myself included, trying to make sure that this project does not end up, becoming worse for the town. I thought we could compromise to 5. But there were other board members, Jane, yourself included, that said 4 was the most you felt comfortable with. And, so to answer your question, we have not said what the number of stories are going to be for these large buildings. But we've said we were pretty clear that nobody likes 6. I think 2 of us were okay with 5, and the other 3 still had either no opinion or were concerned. So does that answer your question, Jane?
Yes, that's pretty much what I remembered, but I was just thinking, did we or did we not? Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Yes, Ashley.
I just wanted to say that I noticed that Mr. Hale has his hand raised in the attendees list.
I was just going to, if I could, Mr. Chairman, I think some questions were raised directly by the abutters who I think would like to hear from Mr. Hale as to the 2 issues that I think you described as downsizing and the second entrance. If he would like to touch on those 2 issues before we close the hearing, I think that would be a good thing to hear.
Okay, Bob, I think that's a good idea. And Mr. Hale, Amy, do you want to let Mr. Hale in?
Yep, I just did. So whenever you're ready, David.
Good evening.
Good evening. Am I on?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So in terms of downsizing, I think I've made myself clear that if I get all my permits and the decision is, doesn't have any gutches that I can't live with, then I'm unlikely to appeal based on 5 stories. I will appeal based on 4 stories. And that's, where I am. Just to set the record straight, last meeting there was a fair amount of discussion about fire safety. And I just want to be clear that the people living in these large buildings will be safer than any of you living in your homes that don't have fire suppression systems. In addition, the longest dead end here is 428 feet. So there really are no fire safety issues. And I think it's dubious as to whether we need a waiver for height at all. We meet the zoning requirement according to the building inspector, and I think that's true. I'm trying to be reasonable, But there, there's another point of view that you should think about, and that is that somewhere between 36 and 45% of our tenants in these multi-story buildings will be people that are 50 plus. Many of these people will be in their 70s and 80s. The demographics that are faced by towns in Massachusetts, they're older demographics. The housing stock, people need some place to move out of their Cape or their Colonial and into a place where they don't have to take care of a yard. They don't have to buy the house. They can park underneath. They have other amenities. They don't necessarily want to move into the city to make that happen. Some people don't want to live on Route 1 in a parking lot. They want to overlook a nice bucolic setting, which we have here. So I think you have to consider the demand for housing in Massachusetts, your community, as well as the current residents. I mean, these are buildings that no one's going to see. So the main impact will be traffic. So we're just going over and over the same thing again. So I'm very comfortable and will ask to close the hearing this evening. So as far as I'm concerned, I have no other way to create another entrance. The emergency access makes it will make it a very safe community. And I appreciate all your time. I know this is a difficult decision. I get it. People don't want it, but it's necessary. And so I think that's where we are. So I'd like to close the hearing.
Okay. Thank you for your comments on that. Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just want to say that there are 3 hands raised from the public at the moment. I don't know what you want to do with that.
Okay. This will be the last. We're going to cut off public comments at 8 o'clock tonight, 10 more minutes. So if you have something that directly relates to new evidence, please address those issues. So Amy, whoever would like to speak, let them on, please.
Okay. First up is Joseph DeSisto. Whenever you're ready, Joseph.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so I wasn't going to say anything just now or about this in any way, shape, or form, but the statements that were just made is a slap in the face to every single one of us that lives in this area. To say that they are going to be safer than anyone living in one of these houses is an absolute joke. And the fact that he's getting his information like this and putting it out like this is disgusting. If you have a high-rise building, okay, higher than 4 or 5 stories, you don't have the amount of firefighters in the entire section of Walpole, Norfolk, Rentham, Foxborough to respond to a high-rise building. You can't have 8 firefighters going into a 5-story building to try and evacuate everybody from the building. And he even just said they're going to be senior citizens living in these buildings. So for him to make a statement like that is ludicrous. He says it's necessary. It's not necessary to move this question and to move this on. It's necessary for him and his investors. It's not necessary for South Walpole that he still doesn't acknowledge exists. For him to say that people in a single family home aren't as safe as these people are going to be in a high-rise building is a slap in the face to all of us. I hope you do the right thing and do not make this more than 4 stories. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
Okay, so next we have Kathleen Garvin. Whenever you're ready, Kathleen.
Thank you very much. I'm a lurker. I watch the ZBA and listen in, especially since I live in South Walpole. And I to take exception to something Mr. Hale said. I was just last week driving home on Washington and taking the right at the island and looked across and can picture exactly where the development's going to be and looked at the tree lines. And there's no way that it's going to not be seen at 5 or 6 stories for sure. I'm pretty sure even at 4 it will be seen from that particular angle based on the houses that are already there that don't have much in the way of trees behind them. And then there's the railroad. So it will definitely be seen. And I just don't think we need anything taller than 4 stories. It doesn't fit with the character. I echo everything everyone else has said about the safety. You know, I have lived here for since '93, and as we've had more and more housing developments built, the traffic has gotten worse on Summer Street for sure. It's backed up in the morning. Coming home mid-afternoon at about 2:45, passing Boyden, it's backed up all the way around, all the way up, going towards Route 1. That's been discussed, I know, ad nauseum, but the fact remains that when you put a development of that size in, you're going to add that many more people. So to decrease it by 60 units doesn't to me seem unreasonable. And my parents are a little older than the 70s that Mr. Hale is talking about. They're in their early 80s, and they are looking to downsize, but I can assure you, this type of development is not the type of development they're looking to move into. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Amy, who's the third person, please?
So next we have Erica Burden.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak again. I also want to reiterate the statement that Mr. Hale made was ridiculous. I agree with Joe. I am an illegal abutter. I live on Washington Extension, and if my house is on fire, I can run to Route 1 in less than probably 30 seconds. I don't have to evacuate from a 57-acre complex that's surrounded by wetlands. So I think we all have to realize that that statement is absurd. And again, I want to reiterate that residents of Walpole, we're fine with him appealing. Let him appeal. I can't reiterate this enough. We've already lost, and all we're asking him to do is to downsize by 60 units. That's about 60 units. We're asking for 4 stories. The complex will still be 240 units. So I highly doubt that, you know, there's going to be an affordable housing crisis with only 30 less units. This is still a very large complex, and I think that needs to be stressed. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Erica. Okay, who's next?
That was it. I don't see any other hands raised at the moment.
Okay, so we've heard from abutters, we've heard from the applicant. I think the zoning board members, we're also at a point where we feel we're pretty much done taking in the evidence, and I think at this point, I too, I'm comfortable if we were to vote tonight to close the hearing. We already have a draft decision, which is something that you don't always have at this point. And I think that we can move forward. You know, and then we have quite a bit of time to file that draft decision. Amy Questle, 40 days after the hearing is closed, is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. So we have, apologies, I've taken so many notes tonight, I have to keep going back. I did figure it out, and it's May 8th is our 40th day.
Okay, and many times the zoning board will use just about all those 40 days to make sure that we get the decision drafted correctly, and we will have other meetings. But if we do close the hearing tonight, there will be no more public testimony. Mr. Hale will not be able to comment. We won't be taking any new evidence, and of course that's a risk for everybody, including the zoning board. But I think we're at that point, So, board members, what's the pleasure of board members? This isn't a vote. I just want to find out where you're at if we have to have any further discussion. Drew, what do you think?
John, I'm okay to close the hearing tonight.
Okay, Jane Coffey, go ahead.
Okay with me.
Okay, so at this point, after, go ahead, Ashley, yes.
Sorry, Attorney Levine's hand is now raised.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Attorney Levine, good evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I don't have anything in terms of evidence to add. I did raise my hand before, but I wasn't recognized. The only thing I would just reiterate, I appreciate the board's effort. I appreciate town council's effort. The board will make the decisions they think to be appropriate. But, one of the discussions that I would ask the board to pay attention to respectfully is that there's been a request to fund, in general terms, $500,000 towards traffic improvements. And obviously, if, we get to a decision that's appealed, that is, not going to be in play. Now, again, I'm not saying that in any kind of way. I just want to make it very clear, okay, that, we have been trying to work this out in a collaborative way. The board makes a decision, we'll review it, we'll do what's appropriate, and that's about it, So thank you for your time. Hope you get to render your decision before May 8th, but if it is May 8th, I'm sure Amy's calculations are probably correct. It'll be by May 8th, okay? Thank you very much. Good night.
In my defense, I used Google, but I will check that, but to make sure. I'm pretty sure it is May 8th.
I'm sure. I'm not questioning that, Amy. I'm just I'm saying, it's sooner the better. But whatever the 40 days come out to, we'll take a look at it, and everybody will do what they think is appropriate. Thanks, and I appreciate your time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I just plugged it into Excel and also got May 8th. So.
Okay, Ashley, did you have anything else?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, so at this point, I think I'm comfortable if we were to vote to close the hearing. So, could I have a motion to close the hearing for case number 0320 55 SS LLC 51 53 55 Summer Street for the comprehensive permit?
So moved.
Moved by Suzanne.
Second.
By Jane. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. This will be a roll call vote. And this is, again, for people watching at home, this is just to close the hearing, and we have 40 days to render a decision, and we'll be having at least, 2 meetings to one or two meetings to get to that point. So, okay, roll call vote. Aye if you're in favor of closing the hearing. Jane Coffey.
Aye.
Suzanne Murphy.
Murphy, aye.
Bob Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Drew Delaney.
Aye.
And I'm John Lee. Aye. Okay. So the hearing is closed. At this point, we now need to talk about when we will have a meeting with just the zoning board. No input from the public, no input from the developer, and we will be going over the actual in detail conditions and what is, let me just ask the Amy's, both Amy Messier and Amy Quessel. Amy Quessel, what's your availability? And Amy Messier, what is an available date for the zoning board? I know we have other cases coming up in next week.
So So I have, if we're sticking with Mondays, I do have April 5th and I do have April 19th. I do not have April 12th.
I think 19th's a holiday, isn't it, Amy?
Oh, you are correct. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So it would be April 5th. I could do April 20th instead of the 19th. That would be a Tuesday.
So what I would just like to say to the zoning board members, I would like to do April 5th, just so that we can, you know, take a look at and see where we're at and go through these, the draft decisions. It's, and that means we have quite a bit of homework, but we do have a week to work on it as far as, you know, going over it ourselves before the meeting and adding anything, and we can add whole new, you know, whole new comments. We're not limited to what's in the draft decision right now.
No, you are not. And typically, typically in situations like this, I do meet with the Zoning Board of Appeals twice before the 40 days is up. So you are correct. If we did meet on April 5th, that would be a situation where we would just go over everything, and the members would give me feedback. And then at the next meeting, you know, that's when we would discuss the feedback and anything else. And then, I mean, with 40 days, we could even go to a third hearing, but or third meeting. But yes, that is normally how I do it.
Okay. Board members, can you make next Monday for a hearing at 7 o'clock?
I'm in.
Yes, I can.
Okay. So, well, the hearing's closed, so I guess the only thing we need to do is agree upon a meeting for next Monday at 7 o'clock by Zoom meeting, and the public will be able to observe. It will be recorded for you know, Walpole Cable, but there will be no more public input at that point. But it's a public hearing, and people are welcome to watch the zoning board deliberate. So, Ashley, it looks like you want to say something.
Yeah, I just want to add, so that includes, we're no longer able to forward any public comment letters to the board. So
Correct.
I just want to make that clear, that if we get public comment letters, we cannot share them with you at this point.
Right, we have the information that's before us, and we move forward with the decision based on what we have at this point. Okay, so the next meeting will be on April 5th, 7 o'clock by Zoom, and we will be going over the conditions. It's public information. It's out there, and it's also I believe it's 30, I forget how many pages. I want to say
30, it's 36.
37?
36 pages, and we've gone, most of us have gone through it some, but now we're going to go through it in more detail. So
I don't want to, you know, make things worse, but this decision actually doesn't include the waivers. So we also have a waiver list that we will also be reviewing too. So we'll get the most recent waiver list out. It is on the website, but we can get it to you guys directly and go over those.
That's the one from February 22nd.
Actually, I think there might be.
I know that we need to update it because.
Yeah, I think there's one more recent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a new request for a fence waiver. So.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
So to answer your question, Drew, we went through the waivers on February 22nd, and we spent a whole meeting going through those. There was a lot of discussion, and I think we were pretty good understanding what the waivers were, what was being requested, and as was just said, there's been a new waiver request which involves a fence of a certain height that would not normally be allowed. Because it's over 6 feet. And so basically we can't condition something that we wouldn't allow. So that will have to be a waiver in there. So, but
Does this continuation to deliberate require a vote?
It does not. You closed the hearing. You're not continuing the hearing. You closed the hearing and you are scheduling a regular public meeting.
Thank you. Sorry, John.
Nope, that's a good point, Suzanne, and I know you've been chairwoman, so I appreciate your guidance on this. So for Amy Messier, let's just make sure that we have this posted this week for next Monday, so that we meet the open meeting law requirements for that, but we will meet next Monday at 7 o'clock by Zoom.
Sounds good.
Okay, that is it for this part of the zoning board meeting. And the only other thing that I had for tonight was we had some minutes from the February 22nd that Amy sent out today. And unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to go over those minutes. I don't know if other board members did. Okay.
Yeah, I did.
Bob?
We can wait. It looked fine to me, but we should wait till everybody's had a chance. That was the waivers meeting. I'd just like to have that. So, okay, so we will not vote on the minutes, but we could do that next week. Okay. Okay, anything else for the zoning board? Okay.
When's our next meeting?
Next meeting is next Monday. And then we also have also a busy night on Wednesday of next week with some regular 48 cases, 348 cases, and the 40B on Moose Hill Road, and Burns Ave, one of the versions of Burns Ave 40B.
All right, great.
Okay, could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, please. Moved by Suzanne, second by Jane. This does not need to be a roll call vote. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, so carried. Okay, Town Council, thank you very much. We'll be in touch on these conditions, and I'll talk with you before our meeting on Monday.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Ashley, thank you for everything. Amy, board members, this has been a long process. This started pre-COVID, so I appreciate everybody's working on this. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.